Welcome to Canada's podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Phil Bliss, and this is Canada's podcast. Today we're going to do a special and take a close look at the hybrid workforce and how much it has progressed in the past. Well, I guess the past 3 years since sort of the beginning of the pandemic. According to a recent report from Deloitte, hybrid work offers the potential for a better work-life balance. It could give workers and companies more flexibility in how, when, and where they work. And it could open the door to more inclusive work environments that accept, different working styles and accommodation needs. Joining me today is Stephen Harrington, partner and national leader for workforce strategy and the future of workforce work advisory for Deloitte. Stephen leads transformations in workforce strategy to fundamentally get at changes in work. And I hope today, Stephen and his report will give us all a good sense of how we take on the future. Stephen, welcome to Canada's podcast. It's great to have you, and I'm glad you spent a lot of time kind of looking at the the latest details and input on hybrid work, which we've all kind of come to the forefront really in the last 2.5 years. And I really recommend everybody to read the report that you put together. It's pretty interesting. But maybe you can just give us a quick précis of some of the high points. That you feel the report uncovered.
Yeah, thank you. I think the idea behind the paper was to investigate whether we could talk about Canada moving towards hybrid models as an opportunity for the Canadian economy. Mm-hmm. And that vision, really plainly, the way it would work is imagine a Canada of the future where more people coast to coast to coast could make different choices about how they interact with the workplace. In fact, in some cases, some people might remain not hybrid at all, but remote as default and work out of, Cape Breton or Attawapiskat or where they choose and still find some of the best job opportunities available in Canada. That kind of improvement of efficiency of labor market attachment could really drive an economy. But then we asked ourselves, what could get in the way? And of course, there are a lot of things that could get in the way with a big change like this at this level. So, for an example, not every Canadian has high-speed internet access. In fact, a lot of Canadians don't, especially those who live outside of major city centers. So, how can you make sure that if this is the next big opportunity for the economy, that it's equal, that people will have equal access to that opportunity and be able to participate in the job market the way they choose?
Well, what about the change in work life? We've been a gathering workforce, if you like, up to now, where we've gone to the work because even if we didn't enjoy the work, we've enjoyed the environment and the people that we work with. Here we are on Zoom together, but I mean, it's still not the same, and I think we've all read about the stress that we've hit as we've been kind of immersed into hybrid work, without expecting it, without planning for it, if you like. What about that? What about that side of it? I mean, did you uncover any gems that our audience which is entrepreneurs and people like that who are big employers? So obviously, all of this is really affecting them. Anything there that you can pass on in terms of information?
Yeah, well, I mean, by the statistics, it's a fascinating story. 80% of Canadians that worked from home during the pandemic would like to continue to work from home post-pandemic the majority of the time, which Philip surprises me because I'm kind of sick of working from my home office. Can't wait to get back to some human interaction, right? But at the same time, while that's true, 80% of Canadians reported suffering burnout at some point during the pandemic. You almost feel it's almost tempting to think it's the same 80%. And then we have to ask ourselves, if it's been so difficult, if work intensification has been so hard, then what is it that makes people want to maintain this way of working? If, for the entrepreneurs in the audience, I will say what a massive opportunity this is. We're already seeing huge growth in what we call work technologies that are meant to make work easier, or facilitation of relationships across distances easier. And there are a lot of problems left to solve. For an example, when I'm talking to clients, I always like to get them to think about the calendar technology we all use every day. And it's always seemed great. Aren't we glad we have modern calendar technology? We've had it for decades. But during the pandemic, what accidentally happened is people began to realize that their life was 30-minute increments that anybody could take digitally, almost without permission. Mm-hmm. You think about that just so perfectly describes the experience of so many leaders in particular who feel like they get up at 8 a.m. and are on calls until 8 p.m. It's those sorts of things that we need to actually redesign. We need to redesign work so that we offset some of those challenges that have become clearer over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording about, what does remote work? Remote work can be very remote. I mean, as an employer, I don't have to employ someone that lives, within 50 kilometers of the office. I can employ somebody in Germany, in Romania, in Morocco. It doesn't really matter, if they have the right skills and what I'm looking for. What does that do in terms of, where does that leave the workforce? I mean, I can imagine some people who are getting pretty upset about that type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of it. It's interesting. So many of the trends that we're dealing with, of course, have started long before COVID.
Oh, sure.
And the growth in the gig economy in North America has been absolutely fascinating to watch. Up to a third of the U.S. workforce has participated in that economy at some stage in their careers. That's massive, and that happened without a political party saying, "Hey, this is a good idea." It's just a sea change in employment that happened almost overnight. I will say that risk also is an opportunity. I was talking to some colleagues at University of Waterloo, and they were reporting Silicon Valley companies approaching their graduates and saying, "Hey, we've got a job for you. We'll pay you in US dollars, and you never have to move to the US. By the way, your laptop's in a courier." So one of the ways we've been talking about this is, how do you compete for talent when the cost of switching is so low for employees that they could literally switch laptops and be working for somebody else within a week? That's a new problem that organizations are really going to have to wrap their heads around.
Yeah, and I mean, seeing as we're all about entrepreneurs, that also feeds into the entrepreneurial mind. I mean, if you're not going into an office and say you're a couple, then that gig side of it kind of can easily nudge in to the full-time side. So how do both sides of the coin deal with that? I mean, that's sort of what you said was employment practices. Is it just like, yeah, it's going to happen, so you just plan for it, or do you try and say, don't make it? You can't do that, and get them to sign some kind of legal stuff, or you may not have the answer. I'm just curious.
Well, when we set workforce strategies, we've been facing these questions for ages. And sort of the classic is figure out what's core in your business. What are the capabilities and capacities that you absolutely need to protect to win? And those are generally the ones you want to own. You want to own them because there's probably some tradescraft or secret to the way you do it, because owning that talent, having them be permanently part of your business, protects the value of your business. But then there's a lot of work to the periphery, and actually even work that might be transactional and dull that you could take away from your full-time workers by thinking more broadly about the people who don't want to attach to your business permanently, who'd be perfectly happy to do that work. That's sort of it's been an idea of talent strategy in the market for quite some time. But you know what, to be honest with you, Philip, most sort of legacy Canadian organizations, they don't work that way. They're still very much dominated by full-time workforce with contractors, but very traditional versions of contractors being a close second. This conversation we're having about a much more distributed workforce with a lot of different types of talent available has remained an idea in corporate Canada, not so much a practice. So it'll be really interesting to see how quickly will entrepreneurs take these opportunities versus the large monolithic companies in Canada who have, as to date, not taken much advantage at all.
The other thing that really interests me is, we've built a working an urban environment, based on going to some work center, downtown, whatever you want to call it, and living in the burbs, especially in the North American economy, not so much in Europe, but especially in the North American economy. And, if you've walked around Toronto, you were saying Ottawa, Calgary, etc., in the last couple of years, it ain't the same. I was talking about the path in downtown Toronto, how it was, there were kids skateboarding through the path, which would have been a laughable situation. And that was at 5:30 in the evening. That's rush hour. You couldn't, 3 years ago, you couldn't move at that time of the day. I mean, which obviously means there ain't many people working in those big high rises downtown in Toronto. What does all that mean in terms of, it all affects the economy, because all of a sudden, as you had some numbers in the report on, I thought they were very conservative numbers, but that's fine. You are accounting for it, so that's fine. But about how home prices have gone basically through the roof, and try leasing office space and things like that, and you'll find that is as low as it has been since I can remember. Certainly in Toronto, I don't know about Ottawa and Calgary and those places so much, but what is there some kind of long-term kind of strategies evolving, or is it still a free-for-all on that side?
Well, I think we're about to find out. I mean, hopefully, I'm going to knock on wood as I'm saying this, over the next few months, we're going to reopen in earnest for the first time since the pandemic began. And then organizations at scale are going to start trying these hybrid strategies they've been talking about. And we'll see what the commuting pattern looks like then. But I will say, in a way, this is an opportunity for us to rethink something that maybe didn't make a lot of sense in the first place. If you were to design a city from scratch, I doubt you would say And then let's have everybody go to basically the same place at the same time twice per day as an efficient means of organizing a society. So on the opportunity side, we can think about it quite differently. And I think that we're going to find that new leaseholders and renters are going to move into downtown cores. And there actually could be opportunity in that. If you think about a city like Toronto, and if you were a mid-sized, fast-growing company, you probably found the downtown core out of reach and its advantages out of reach. And maybe now they won't be. And if you think about the suburbs and the rural areas, talk about opportunities for entrepreneurs, there's going to be a whole new consumer class that spends way more time in the suburbs and rural areas than they used to, which has to be an opportunity for business to think very differently about their footprint or even the services they offer.
Mm-hmm. So, live, I'm going to hang with it because it's a key thing. Live, work. I mean, do we really go into work 2 days a week? Is that the real future? Or does it, one day a month, the real future?
I think it's going to be a mix. We keep talking about sort of, and by the way, we've done a lot of really dry and exciting workforce segmentation for some of these strategies where you actually take the strategy that an executive set and you start to think about, well, what employees will be able to work in different ways. We have to remember that 60%-ish of Canadians will go back to work. In some cases, they never stopped because they're frontline workers in one way, shape, or form. They work in a plant or retail outlet or what have you. For the other 40%, I do think there's going to be a mix. I'll talk about 3 strategies that we're seeing. One is hybrid and structured. So what that means is the organization is thinking, we still want to optimize that real estate and we want people to be consistent. So we're going to tell them what days of the week to come in. They'd say, Philip, you're going to be in 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Stephen, you're going to be in 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's how we're going to balance our portfolio and our office. There's another version of hybrid, a lot like Deloitte's version, where we're saying the offices are open. Come in when you need them. And that's more of a autonomous sort of hybrid approach, where we're not going to dictate how our people use our office space, but we are going to really make our office space hard to resist. The best of technology, the best of social, all kind of create the workplace as a magnet. Yeah.
Yeah. I know I've got a lot of friends like that, but I mean, and some of them fairly senior, and they all seem to be saying, yeah, we're going to keep hybrid as it, and we're going to keep the office, but we've just given up 40% of the floor space. We only think we need 60% of the floor space. So, that's a lot of floor space to give up. So I'm just curious, because I mean, it still means less people in the core. Okay, we were talking earlier. Toronto's pretty useful in the sense that it transformed itself over the last quarter century from emptying out at 7:00 at night to actually having a ton of people that actually live and work downtown. But it's not really the rule in most North American cities. They still fall into the suburban kind of that broke down the downtown, if you like. So it tends to be only a workspace, not a live space. So what does that do? I mean, so there's 2 things. I mean, the economy's there. What does it do for that kind of the retail economies that rely on those day trippers, if you like, everyday trippers to buy goods and services on one level, and on a city level? How do you keep the city going when you lose that tax base, basically?
Yeah, I'm on the optimistic side of this. I think every city is going to be different,
Yeah.
but I think we will find people to lease those spaces. I think there are a lot of businesses that would have loved to have been in downtown Calgary, downtown Edmonton, downtown Vancouver that have been unable to. Now, the value proposition might change. It might change what those leases are worth over the short term. But over the longer term, that should go a long way to revitalizing those downtowns. I think they'll actually be more dynamic because there are more companies per square foot, if you will, occupying that lease space. And we'll have growth outside of the core. That's the part that's exciting. That's the part where, we may see more shared office spaces. And around those shared office spaces, whole new retail operations opening up to serve those customers. It's about, you know what? I'll put it this way, Philip. If there's a country that needed to distribute itself better geographically, Canada's probably a prime example. Uh, we wanted to live outside of those major urban cores and cover our country in a lot of ways, but it's been difficult historically. This really could be the change that instigates something different when it comes to distribution.
Opportunity side, and that, what I was saying, that sort of crawl, walk, run type of strategy. Is there, two or three gems that you could give us that we should be paying a lot of attention to?
Yeah, well, employers, of course, have to figure out how they're going to play this whole opportunity.
Yeah.
And one piece of advice that I've settled on as I've gotten smarter over the last couple of years is start with your business strategy. Think about how your workforce strategy can follow that. Because what I worry about is that some employers are going to set up hybrid work arrangements or let people work remote as default and find within a short period of time that it's not working for them. And because it's not core to the way they do business, it'll be really easy to slip on that value proposition or not really differentiate yourself from a competitor that's taking it very, very seriously. I'll give you an example, and not to start a rumor because this has absolutely not happened, but imagine that Indigenous Affairs Canada decided we don't need an office in Ottawa. What we need over time is to locate our business in the communities we serve, and over time also to employ people out of the communities we serve. Now, that would be an incredibly advantageous distributed model for them because of the business that they're in. I hope that makes sense.
That makes a lot. Okay, it makes a lot of sense. People don't know, but I have a very, very strong Indigenous network, so it makes a heck of a lot of sense to me. But that, I think that's really good. That shows you what can happen. Okay, and what you're saying is we've probably gone through decades of centralization, and maybe this is sort of the green light to say that was happening a little bit prior to the pandemic, but now that the tools have improved themselves in the last 3 years, now's the time, kind of thing, to really get
and
better.
The biggest thing that's changed is what we think of as possible. I work a lot in the public sector, and before COVID, people would have said public sector workers can't work from home. It's impossible. What would they achieve? They wouldn't be able to get work done. And yet, if you look at the track record of the public sector over the last couple of years, they've done more in a shorter period of time than ever before. So there's this inflection point where we've started to think differently about how we can organize work. But my main point is that's nice, but now how can it improve our business? That's truly powerful. And it's that kind of thinking that's going to reshape the Canadian economy. It's that kind of thinking that will take up the office space that's abandoned in downtown cores and really solve a lot of the problems that you and I have been talking about.
I like that. Stephen, it's been great having you on the show. Now, as I said, I read the report. How can people get a hold of the report? Is there a space they can go to download it, or what's
Yes, there is. And I wish I had the answer immediately for you.
Okay, don't worry about it.
I do not have. I don't know. I Google it when I'm looking for it. My marketing team will kill me for not being able to answer that question.
Don't worry about it. We'll put something on. So that's great. But it really has been great. Great to meet you, Stephen. And I did read the report, as you could tell, and I really enjoyed it. So,
Oh, thanks for having me. I think this is a really important discussion.